Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Maîtresse Collette d'Avignon. I am a Laurel of the East. I live in Maine, so far from a lot of people. But my focus has been the scribal arts, both creating and helping others get started. I am the deputy signet for the East. So, one of my main goals is to help people begin their journey in the scribal arts. People reach out to me having heard of us off the street, having been in the SCA for years, and anywhere in between. Um, like it was mentioned earlier, if you have any questions as we go, just drop them in the message box, and as they pop up, I'll do my best to answer them. So to start, every kingdom runs their award delivery system just a little bit different. I'm going to be running off of my knowledge of the East Kingdom because that's where I am and that's what I know. So just keep in mind that some of these things may be a little bit different depending on where you are. So one of the first things to do when you are starting off in the Scribal world is to find your local group, to find where people are meeting up, where people are practicing, and you can often do this by reaching out to your chatelaine or your new member coordinator. They should have an email on your local site, your local website, and they're going to be your point person for kind of starting off um, this journey. In addition to that, I highly recommend if your region has a new member scribe deputy to reach out to them as well, because they are going to know all about how to get you started, what recommendations to make for assignments, maybe some other meetups that are in your region outside of your local practice, etc. In the East, I was previously the new scribe deputy to the Office of the Signet. So my main job was to receive emails from people who were really interested or maybe had dabbled a little bit here and there to look at how they were progressing and say, yeah, let's get you started with a teacher. Or, hey, here are some meetups in this area. Why don't you start off there? Come back to me once you've practiced a little bit and maybe they find out that Scribal is not their jam. Maybe they figure out that they like illumination better than calligraphy, calligraphy better than illumination, or maybe wordsmithing is what they want to do. So first, sussing out those things is going to be really important. Um, the next thing, find a point person other than your chatelaine and your new member scribe coordinator. So a person in your local group who has done Scribal before. It doesn't have to be a teacher and it doesn't have to be a Laurel. Those are good things, but you want it to be somebody who knows the process. And oftentimes, this is kind of an in-person or online, hey, I've never done this before. Would you mind walking me through the process just to make sure I haven't missed anything? Because there are going to be recommendations from each area of the known world that may do their scribble a little bit different. We want our margins to be about half an inch in the east so that you can put it in a frame, but that might not necessarily be true somewhere else. Making sure that you get your um, shields on there for someone's award of arms, making sure that you have selected the right uh, local award to put on the scroll. Going through those little things and just running it by a point person, that is going to be huge. And again, doesn't have to be a Laurel, doesn't have to be your own personal teacher, but some sort of point person. And finally, we want to make sure that the Signets office knows who you are. So maybe you've gone to a couple practices, You think, yeah, I would really love to paint. I'm telling you my story, by the way. I would really love to paint. I like this. Contact my friend and I say, hey, I want to try to work on a scroll. What do I do? I get assigned a backlog scroll. I go through everything, and now I have this beautiful piece of paper. What do I do with it? Well, you're going to want to reach out to your Signets office. In the East, there is the signet.eastkingdom.org website. It brings you to the College of Scribes. That's just the general overarching term of everybody who participates in the Scribal community, your calligraphers, your illuminators, your wordsmiths, and all of your officers. The Signet is responsible for keeping track of all of those people and all of the awards and all of the people who manage those awards for the royals. So putting in your name and filling out the new scribe informational, what's your name? What styles do you like to work in? Do you have a teacher? How long have you been doing this? Give us some examples of your work. That helps the Signet then assign you scrolls in the future. One of my uh, favorite things to do when I was the new member scribe coordinator was to really dig deep into what people were interested in doing. And I didn't necessarily want to hear, well, I'll do anything. No, I wanted to hear about what interested you. As you learn, you're going to find that maybe there are some styles that you prefer over others, but we want to start you off with something that really fuels your fire, something that's interesting, something that captures your attention, because that's what's going to keep you going. So if I can pull up, there we go. I'm going to drop the link. This is specifically for the East Kingdom. Um, so I don't necessarily have the link to anyone else, but this is what the Signets website looks like. It's in the messages. Along the top, you're going to see new scribes. Clicking new scribes is going to then take you to a new scribe form, which is really just a Google Doc. It's going to ask contact information, your name, your SCA name, which is not required to accept a scroll assignment, by the way. If you're brand new and you have not decided on your SCAARTS identity, that's okay. Um, Zip code. This is really important because sometimes people will fill out this document beforehand or fill out this document and move, uh, fill out this document and play with a different group. Uh, so this component is interesting and important. We want to know the zip code for where you are actively playing. For instance, for a long time, I was living down in New Hampshire. It's the neighboring state to Maine, but it's a completely different group. I was living in one barony, but I was playing in a different province. The important part here is that I would try and list a zip code within the province that I was playing so that my signet knew that that was where I was going to be participating. You can also make notes down at the bottom with additional information. Hey, I listed my zip code for here, but actually I played here. That's useful information. And then prior experience. Some people played 20 years ago. They took a break because of life, and then they come back, which is great, and we love to see that. And maybe they're just now getting into Scribal. Well, if you had art experience in college or art experience 20 years ago in the SCA, and now you're trying to get into it, we're probably going to put you with more advanced scrolls or ones that have a shorter lead time than folks who have never done any sort of art before. And then the same thing goes with calligraphy experience. This totally includes, working on wedding invitations and birthday cards and graduation cards, anything that's really put a nib in your hand because it's going to make teaching a lot easier. And then, of course, what are you interested in doing? I don't want to assign you wordsmithing if you have no interest in doing that. And I certainly don't want to assign you calligraphy if all you want to be doing is painting. So once you submit that form or you send an email off to your Signet, they then will put you into a large spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet is going to consist of every single scribe in your kingdom, every single one, active and non-active, new and experienced. And as they go through each event and each royal, assignments will come in and they will be sent off. Usually, people who have reached out to the Signet and said, hey, I would really like an assignment. Those people are probably going to get assigned first. Our Signet has done a really good job over the last few years of making sure that they try and pick people who are within the barony or the canton, riding, um, province, uh, of which the person is receiving the scroll, so that there's some sort of connection, some sort of um, meaning behind receiving a scroll from that person. And often that's going to be your lower level awards. Now, as you move up in your experience, people can request you and request your work, and that works a little bit differently. But just to get started, you'll reach out to your Signet and say, I'm ready for my first scroll. And they'll assign something to you based on the information that you have provided on your Google Doc. Now, from there, you have your assignment. Your first assignment is going to be Collette d'Avignon's Silver Brooch, our East Kingdom low level, beginner level award for arts. Great. Now what? You're going to make sure that you have some resources. Um, I have used mostly online resources, but utilizing your local libraries is absolutely encouraged. I am a trained librarian. I love when people utilize the libraries. Sometimes the hours are not convenient or getting to and fro is not easy, not conceivable, and that's okay. There are online resources that are very good, and reaching out to any person who works in a library, museum, archive, they have always been willing to work with me to get higher quality digitization. So do not be afraid. Also, going back to that point person that you have, the chatelaine or the signet, reaching out and saying, I know I want to do a 15th century floral border. I don't know where to find that. Can you help me? Is an absolutely legit email. We love getting stuff like that because it's our ability to go, oh, I have 20 bookmarks ready for you. I do have a list of, let's see here, a list of online resources that I'm going to drop in the chat. Um, Before the British Library lost a lot of their information, that was probably my favorite go-to, until they can kind of get everything up and completely back online. They're not really a good resource right now, but when they do come back online, I'm very certain that they will have great resources again. So I do have that listed as number one, just preface I'm copying and pasting from a document. Hopefully one day we can get all that stuff again. So put this right in the chat for everyone. La Bibliothèque nationale de France. You do not have to speak French to use this website. If you're using it in a Chrome browser, a Firefox browser, a Safari browser, whatever, there is a button that you can click right up in the browser corner that will change it over to your preferred language, English or whatever. So that's really nice. And they have an extensive archive of manuscripts from a wide range of time periods. So using this, flipping through pictures is very fun. The World Digital Library is also really great. They have a lot of scanned images that you can search by time frame, and it'll be just the image, maybe not the whole page. You can search by time frame, region, country. The search system for that is fabulous. The J. Paul Getty Museum and the Morgan Library also have a fabulous uh, collection of materials, and they also have 3D objects, vases, fans, shoes, clothes. And you're saying, Collette, why are you bringing these things up? A fun thing to do as a new scribe is trying to think outside of the box on how to make these scrolls fabulous. Maybe you're getting to the point where my 2D painting is looking more 3D. I want to incorporate it into a Venetian fan. I've done this. You're still painting. You're still doing your gold work. You're still doing all of the things that you would normally. But now we take all these pieces and we assemble it into a 3D object, which is really fun. You have all of that material there available. And I have reached out to both the Getty and the Morgan personally and emailed with their archivists, and they've been very friendly and willing to help and take pictures. So if ever you need to, you're having trouble searching for something, or maybe the resolution on your pictures is not great, they are very easy to communicate with. So I've dumped a lot of information so far. How do you know what you like? How do you know where in the Scribal world you fit? Great question. I highly recommend dabbling a little bit in everything in the beginning, even if you don't think you're going to like it. I was convinced I was going to be a calligrapher only, and I turned out to be an illuminator, a calligrapher, and a wordsmith. And sometimes it happens in the very beginning. You get all that exposure and you say, yeah, I like it all. And sometimes it comes to you years later, like with me, I decided, well, I would really like to be able to do my own calligraphy so that I know it matches my illumination. Maybe I'll take up calligraphy. And so I took, even as a Laurel, beginner classes so that I could improve my calligraphy and work on new calligraphy. Um, a very funny story. As the new scribe deputy to the Signets Office, I received a brand new email of someone who had been wordsmithing for years, but I didn't recognize their name right away, as we have our wordsmiths separate from our calligraphers and illuminators in our spreadsheet. And so I introduced myself and, oh, here's some starting resources, and here's this. And silly me, it turns out it was our prince. He was interested in starting up calligraphy. He just wanted to. And it didn't really matter who was on the other side of that email. I was going to greet them, provide all this information on where to get started. So, little funny thing that happened. Um, Other resources other than the ones that I listed in the chat utilize things like, and hear me out, Things like Google Images, Pinterest, groups that you see on Facebook. I think I've joined a couple of um, archival groups that show really fun pictures, and it's a good place to start. I encourage my students to look through all sorts of pictures. Um, but when you finally find the one that you want, do that research to find where it comes from. That's going to be the most important part. You don't necessarily have to do an APA citation of where you got the image, but you should know at least the name of the book, the collection, the museum that you got it from. With calligraphy, I very unironically always point them in the direction of Ian the Green's blog. He has wonderful step-by-step how to do calligraphy and get started, list of materials, and how to practice at home. There are also a number of books that are unfortunately out of print, but you can still get them in used bookstores or thrift books. And then using YouTube. There is somebody that I follow on Instagram, and I watch how she does all of her white work. And I watch those videos on repeat because watching how she does it helps me work on my work. So even utilizing those little things. Okay, now you have an idea for Colette's uh, beginner level art award. You kind of know that you want to do a floral border, and you kind of know it's going to be 15th century. Maybe you've even picked out a picture to reference. What now? You're going to need a ton of materials. Maybe not a ton, but you're going to need a number of materials. Okay, so materials. You have this idea. What do you do? First, you're going to need some paper. Most kingdoms, uh, if you're going to be doing your own scroll, so from start to finish, and you don't have something that's pre-outlined, we encourage you to use Bristol. Now, certainly other people use paper from different places, maybe stuff that they already have, maybe something that's a little bit more cost effective, and all of that's okay. Really, we just want to make sure that you have a paper that doesn't allow for seepage. So when you're painting on it, calligraphing on it, you don't have stuff coming through the back of the paper, and you don't have ripping. That's another thing. If you're going to be using those nibs, we don't want you to get in trouble where you have fibers getting into your nibs or you're ripping through your paper. We really want to set you up for success. Probably the most common paper is Bristol, and the brand that I see the most is called Strathmore Smooth. I have almost exclusively used that. Uh, there are a couple other brands that I've used, and they're definitely fine. If you go to some place like Dick Blick, they have other colored cardstock that is very similar to Bristol in that it doesn't pill in your nib, it doesn't allow for seepage through the back of the paper, and that paper is very fun to do things like the black hours, where you have the black background and the gold and the blue or the gold and the purple. Um, Sometimes you're going to find that there are scrolls that are going to be not Eurocentric. For instance, I recently did a laurel scroll for a Japanese persona, and I wanted to make sure that it represented her Heian Dynasty persona and time period. So I went out of my way to find mulberry paper. But it meant that I had to learn how to use that paper. It's not going to be straightforward. It's going to be a completely different technique. So keep in mind that the paper that you choose, you want it to not fight you. And you don't want to feel like you have to learn something completely new when you're already learning something new. Set yourself up for success. Make it easy for yourself. I highly recommend all of my students start with 9.5 by 11 or 11 by 14 paper. Really, I don't encourage anything bigger than that just for my own students because I want to make sure that they're focusing on details and they don't get lost in the hugeness of the paper. But I also don't want to go too small when they're starting because I want them to feel comfortable that they're able to put everything that they want to on the paper. At the beginning of the class, I heard somebody say they've made a postage size stamp, which is incredibly impressive. I've never done that. So kudos to you. I wouldn't have somebody start off with that. If they're very confident and they want to, great, but try to point them in the direction of 9.5 by 11 or 11 by 14. Those are also easy sizes to frame. So for somebody who's starting off, one of the biggest rushes and the biggest thrills is seeing somebody frame your art. I mean, I remember the first time somebody came up to me and told me that they had framed my brand new art and showed me a picture. I couldn't believe it that my art was on somebody's wall, but it was easy for them. I didn't make it an awkward size. So now have your paper. You need to put something on the paper. And that's going to be, depending on what you're doing, calligraphing or illuminating, it's going to be either an ink or a paint. Um, for paint, the paint that is most recommended is going to be gouache. I had never heard of gouache before I came to the SCA. Some people starting off probably won't have either. It is a suspended pigment, so it works a lot like watercolor in that you can dilute it so that you can change the opacity. But when it dries, and if there's enough material, enough pigment on the paper, it can be as opaque as acrylic. However, something that I make sure that I tell all of the new people playing with it is it reconstitutes even after it's dry. That can be good. It might allow them to fix mistakes. It might be bad because maybe it gets caught in the rain, it gets a drink spilled on it, what have you. So something I like to tell new people is just be careful. If it gets wet, even after it's dry, it might bleed, it might smear. So that's the nature of gouache. But the reason we use this is because it is the closest paint modernly that we have to egg tempera, which was a very common paint back in somewhere between 12th and 15th century until they started using oils. In your beginner kit, I would start off with very basic colors. Red, yellow, blue, white, black, and maybe even get a metallic, a gold, a silver, something like that. But you can make just about any color from those. I have on occasion purchased browns, a variety of browns, because I have a hard time finding those colors. But my kit personally consists of those. And I have created a wide variety of colors. Um, I wouldn't go out of your way to go and get the magentas and unless you're looking for really bright greens. I wouldn't invest in a green. Just getting those red, yellow, blue, white, black, maybe a brown, maybe a metallic. And that could be a really good starter. Um, I have worked with designer gouache in the past, and on the tube it will usually say designer gouache. Let me see if I have one just kind of floating around here. Here we go. here. Well, anyway, on the tube it will say designer gouache. Some of them will say other things like Premier gouache, etc. The designer gouache has what I find to be a smoother texture. It's easier to reconstitute, and because of both of those things, your result is better. It is, however, usually a higher price point. So if you are working with a new person or you yourself are the new person, consider how much you want to put forth for the paint. And I say this because you can get less expensive paints, and that is not wrong. I have seen many scrolls created with paints that I didn't even know the brand because they came from eBay. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Something that you may run into, though, is maybe because you can't read the ingredients or it's made somewhere that doesn't have good access to pigments or regulations on how things are produced, whatever the case, you may be fighting the paint. So looking at something like a Holbein, a Winsor Newton, those brands, those are like the well-known gouache designer brands. Something similar to those. They also make little kits, of very small tubes with all of those. I have purchased them on eBay. People are selling off their art teacher supplies. You can find them. But those are probably where I would begin. I have also taken small little, do I have any? Small little cups like this that maybe have a lid. And for my students, put a little bit of each color of my own paint into them. You could do it with an Altoids can or even just a little tray, the paint trays that have the 6 little compartments. Putting a little bit of gouache in there and giving that to your student or having your teacher give that to you so that you can play around with maybe some of the brands without investing. There is a gentleman that I find very entertaining to watch, and it kind of shows this point. I will also link this video at the end of the class because it really shows you that not all paint is made the same. This gentleman is an artist on Instagram that paints pictures using the same color from different brands. And you can see that not all of the consistency is the same, not all of the colors are the same, even though they're labeled yellow, cadmium yellow, whatever. So it's a really good, it's beautiful work, and it's a really good illustration that not all paint is made the same. So finding something that's going to work for you, utilizing your friends to try, maybe some of their yellow versus one that was gifted to you, seeing which one you like. Maybe one goes on smoother, maybe one's easier for you to work with. Question for the class. Within our Barony, I created our Gilded Key supplies box. We use it to supply new scribes. Because it exists, we get donations as largesse. I think that's amazing. My local group has put together some starter boxes for folks who are beginning Scribal. Often we have people come with their own supplies, and that's great. But we have bags. I mean, huge Ziploc bags of all brown, all black, orange, yellow, red, green. And it was part of a huge purchase from eBay. An art teacher of 20 years was retiring and getting rid of all of their gouache. So we bought it. And so now somebody, if somebody's starting off and they say, I have trouble making brown, They can go through the bag, pick out a brown, and there you go. We also have little kits that we give people so they can play with gouache instead of having to, spend 50 bucks. So that's great. I would love more people to be able to do that too. Just kind of give someone. That's how I started. I had a Laurel. I went to a Scribal class. A Laurel gifted me a tiny little box of paints and said, "Here, play with these at home, see what you think." And I don't think I would have been able to do it not having that. So that's really great. Thank you for doing that. All right, you have your paper, you have your paint. Someone has lent you their paint box and they said, "Hey, go play with my gouache." Well, you need some way to apply the paint to the paper, and that's going to be brushes. Um, I personally, I go into Michael's and I touch and feel and look at the size of them, and I don't really go based on, I need a an aught one or a double aught one. I don't, I look at it and say, I think this can get small enough, or I think this can get big enough. I also touch to feel whether the brush is going to be soft enough. If it's a natural material, I go by touch. That's just me. But something for those of us who can't touch the brushes, maybe we're purchasing online, can't get to the store, you want round tipped brushes. Square tip brushes are not going to be able to push gouache in the way that's going to make it easy for you to paint. So what I mean by a round tip brush versus a square tip brush, I will show you because I have my brushes right here. And these are very large examples just so we can see them on the computer. All right, square tip brush. This one has a little bit of an angle, but it's going to have that flat edge. If it was smaller, it would look maybe something like this. These are not going to be your friend with gouache. Gouache likes to be gently pushed around the paper. So you're going to want something that's more like this. And it doesn't have to be super small. It can be big. Probably the one that I have used the most is going to be a 2, which is about this size. I have really, really tiny ones, which look like little eyelashes, which is a 20-aught. And I mean, I'm not even sure if anybody can see that. I have super tiny ones. I rarely, rarely use them unless I'm doing really fine detail. That doesn't have to be super small. I would say start off with a 2. This is Royal and Langnickel in a size 2. Other brushes, like I said, I purchased these from Michael's. Winsor and Newton. And you can get, the comfort handles and the really fancy silk feeling ones. That's all you. Whatever works for you as far as comfort, go for it. You want a rounded brush. You're going to want something to start off around a 2. If you feel like you need something bigger, get a bigger one. If you feel like you need smaller, get a smaller one, but start with a 2. It's going to be a really good starting point. You can find Royal and Langnickel pretty much everywhere. Dick Blick, Michael's. We have a local art chain called Artists and Craftsmen. There might be some others around wherever you are, but that should be one that is available almost everywhere. All right. And after that, you're going to need a pencil. You want something that's going to be light on the touch, that's not going to leave a lot of graphite behind. My preferred pencil is going to be, I have it right here, a Staedtler. And this is a refillable little pencil You can get at Staples, you can get it online, but this is, oh, what do they use it for? They use it for engineering. Yeah. So there's a drafting section in Staples. Um, maybe some other office stores might have something similar, but these don't leave a whole lot of graphite behind. So when you're erasing, you don't have to worry about leaving pencil marks. You also don't have to press very hard for you to be able to see the image, which is also great because you're not going to have pencil lines. I used to have a very hard hand using a pencil. I would leave creases in the paper, and actually using this pencil has gotten me out of that habit. But on the topic of pencils, you also want a white eraser. So in the same section of Staples, you can get it online, is going to be a Staedtler eraser. It does not have to be this brand. I also have used a fabric eraser. Um, I have also used a regular white rubber eraser. And I even have one around here that's one of those mushable ones. Doesn't matter, but you want something that's not going to leave a color behind. That's really important. A soft eraser that's not going to leave color behind. So the pink ones don't work super well because you can often leave the pink color on the paper when you don't want that. Um, a T-square. Anybody who has gone into Home Depot or has somebody who does woodworking around them, any sort of measuring, you're going to need a T-square. Okay, this is going to help you make all of those edge lines easy for you. And on that same topic, you're going to want a cork-backed ruler, which I thought I had in here, but I don't. But same thing, something that's going to be lifted off the paper so that you don't ruin your paper. I have often used a ruler that does not have a cork back. It is not a requirement. It is helpful for people who are starting because it is less likely to smear any graphite, smear any paint or calligraphy if you have to make an edit. Just setting you up for success. Now, we've gone over a lot of the stuff for illumination, but what you're going to need if you're, say, in the calligraphy route. I'm going to just get out some of these examples here. All right. So if you're doing calligraphy, you're going to want a nib holder. This was my very first nib holder. I got it on Amazon. It has seen better days. I've had to replace that metal section 3 times. It's doused in ink and the cork is dripping. Not the best quality, but it's what was comfortable for me, and so it's what got me started, and that's okay. You can get really good custom-made wood ones. These are ones that I have had made for me based on how I calligraph and the hand that I use. So you can get those. You can also get this one. This was gifted to me, like little kind of plasticky ones. It has to be comfortable for you because when you are writing, you are going to be holding this, not me. So whether it be cork, tiny little plastic, get you a custom one, it doesn't matter. But something that's going to be able to hold a nib. The next thing is you need nibs. Now, I recommend there is a beginner nib package that you can purchase. You can get it at Staples, Dick Blick, Artisan Craftsman. Any of your local art stores should have the same compilation of uh, calligraphy starter kit. And it's going to give you, probably a little box like this. It's going to give you probably something like this. And it's going to give you nibs. It's going to give you a variety of nibs, and they are all going to be square tips. And that's perfect for starting. If you're not ready to go onto the metal nibs yet, you can also get fabric tipped markers. Thank you, felt tip markers that are square. They're going to be larger, but you can play around with those and kind of get the idea of how your nib angles will work without doing the scary thing of working with the metal nibs. Truthfully, these are easier though. So you're going to get your nibs. You have your nib holder. Now you're going to need ink. So any of the above places that I've listed also will have ink. I've seen people have ink from all over the world. So really find something that is thin enough, find something that has decent pigment and is not going to ruin your nib. That's my requirement. As far as what it's made of, I'm not going to tell you. Um, there are people who are in the SCA who sell period pigments. Ian the Green is one of them. There are multiple people in different areas of the US who sell them. They are black walnuts, iron gall, whole bunch of different very period recipes. You don't have to use that. I don't think that I have access to mine very easily right now, but one of the ones that I use the most is Speedball because it is easy to get. If I need to do a lot of scrolls in a short amount of time, I'm going to use that. Now, if I'm going to be doing a very fancy period pelican scroll, I will go out of my way to use the good ink, the more expensive ink, the stuff that's more period. But it's okay to use something like a Mitchell's or a Speedball or a Brigham ink. There's also Noodlers. Is a really good ink that comes in different colors, so you can mimic the blues or the greens or the reds of the calligraphy that you're looking at. Those don't generally break the bank. You can get them through a number of places. For calligraphers, an Ames lettering guide. And if somebody has never seen one, I'm going to dig mine out real quick. The Ames lettering guide is another drafting tool that is used to make multiple lines parallel to one another. So let's see here. Hopefully I can find mine. Go. All right. Hopefully you can see this. There was a message in the group. One caution, some inks are quite fugitive. We did an experiment years ago and it was fugitive. We did an experiment years ago and it was very shocking how quickly some faded. Absolutely true. Let me see here. The ones that I have used. Since I'm already in the box, I'm gonna get them out. So these are just all of the inks that I have used. Some of them I don't have here. So there's Higgins Eternal, Eternal Black. This is what you're going to get in your beginner calligraphy box that you get from Michaels. This is Green Hand Calligraphy and Supply. This is Ian's. And this is my last bottle of Iron Gall. Very precious. Only special scrolls get that. I have a Noodlers ink in black. They have, if you go through, I'm blanking on the name of the company right now. It's a Scribal company. I'll get back to you. Oh, here it is, right here. John Neal Books. They put it on there. If you go through John Neal, you can actually order sample size of their inks. So if you aren't sure you're really going to like it and you don't want to invest in this size, you can get this one, which is great. So that's a black. I also have a red somewhere. Um, I have not had any of those fade yet. I would be interested though, Karen, if you recall which ones did fade quickly, and how long it took. I would just be so curious about that. The last one I have, this is a Winsor and Newton calligraphy ink. Something that I do caution against the metallics. Every time I use this, I have to thin it. And that is the nature of the metallic pigment. They're larger molecules, clumps. And so they need to be thinned so that they can move through your nib. So just something to keep in mind. You can, I have done this too, use gouache. It has to be very thin and it is tricky. I don't encourage new people to do it, but something that maybe you can play with if there's a color that you just can't, like you want to put a red name. You want Collette to be in red, but you forgot to go and buy red ink. You could use red gouache. I've done it. It's tricky, practice, but I've done it. All right, so calligraphers, and I have also used this in my illumination, Ames lettering guide. So this tool right here is used along a T-square, and you'll put your pencil in one of these little dots depending on what size you want the spacing in between your lines, and it allows you to create parallel lines. I encourage all of my students to start out lining their calligraphy areas. If they have trouble with keeping things square and oriented in the correct ideation, then I even have them make boxes, vertical and horizontal lines. So, Karen says, we lettered with several different inks and then taped the papers in the window so they got light for several weeks. Pelican ink and India ink performed the best. Oh, that's good to know. Okay, I'm gonna have to get some of that. I don't have any. And Margaret states that Detrimentus makes pigment inks that are archival, waterproof, and comes in period colors. Ooh, I love that. It's fountain pen ink, but works with both dip nibs and brushes as well. I love that. That's good to know. Thank you. And so with all of that, I know that that seems like a lot, but you need paper. You need something to put on the paper. Paint or ink. You need a way to apply your medium. Brushes or nib and nib holder. You're going to want to be able to put a pencil on the paper, whether you're sketching shapes or putting down lines, and you want a way to erase. And using those white erasers, like I said, I'm looking in my art box now, I have 4 more sitting. And honestly, I love the fabric erasers. I like being able to hold them like this over large spaces. But if I want to do a small space, using the little pen style eraser is good too. Oh, we have more conversation about the ink happening. Margaret says, India ink contains shellac and can damage nibs. Good to know. I had no idea. And Ellen, Dr. Martin's Black Star India ink is matte and not shiny like a lot of the India ink. Clean nibs frequently to keep it from attaching permanently to the nib. Yes. Ellen, actually, this reminds me, nib and brush care. All right, you've created your beautiful masterpiece. whatever that is. It could be words, it could be your um, your floral border. Whatever it is, though, you need to take care of your source for creating that art. Nibs are removable and should be removed. I am of strong opinion about this. They do rust. So I did not take my own advice many years ago, many years ago, and I have permanent rust on my nibs. Now, that's not the side of the nib that I'm using, but what can happen is this nib can rust in place. And then you will not be able to get it out, or you'll have to take out this little metal piece to be able to use another nib. It's a pain, it's a hassle, and really it's just not good care for the nibs. You can you can use a nib cleaner, which this is, I'm not quite sure, this has ammonia and a sponge. You can dip your nib in there and clean it. All I do really is as soon as I'm done with my nibs, I rinse them, I take them out, I use a Q-tip, and I dry them. That's all I do. Nothing fancy. But cleaning your nibs is going to make sure that they last for a long time. And when you find that nib size that really, really works for you, you don't have to go and buy more. So I clearly didn't learn my lesson the first time. I have two others that are severely rusted. But not just that, I didn't clean the side either. And so what happened was I ended up having to go through a very intense cleaning process to get all of the ink that dried back here off. It stained my nib. It makes it really rough to use because once this little section right here starts rusting, you are not going to get a good flow of ink. And it's going to be a pain in the butt to use, which is not fun. As far as your brushes, clean them in water, maybe a little soap. Sometimes if you are using something like an adhesive so that you can do gold work, you know, clean it with some Lest oil or something like that to get the glue off. Be kind to your brushes. Don't leave them in the water. That is going to break down the hairs. It's going to make them fray. You're not going to get pointy tips, and you're going to be really upset because you're going to have to buy another one. And that being said, don't smush the ends. If you do that, you're going to end up with this. And nobody wants to paint with that. Don't smush them on the bottom of the cup. Just swirl it around in the water. Don't mush it. When you're mixing your paints, take your bad and gross brushes to mix the paints, not your good ones. These should be used to mix because they're already all wonky. These, once your paint is settled and you have the consistency that you want, then go in with your good brushes. You'll be happy because you won't have to rebuy the good ones. Honestly, this is a brush that I've had since I was a child, and I have just carried it all along. So this is a very old brush. But because it has such soft texture, and I really can't do anything with that, this is a mixing brush. Uh, So now you have created your masterpiece. You have your calligraphy. You have your border and your illumination. You have the award on there. You remembered to put the award on there. Now what? This is easily the most important part of the whole process. You need to turn in your scroll. So when you receive a scroll assignment, you will likely And I'm speaking because of my knowledge of the East Kingdom. If you're in a different kingdom, this might function just slightly differently. You're going to receive an email from the Signet. And that email lists what the award is, who the recipient is, who the royals are, all the information that you need to complete your assignment. And it's going to also say when the award is being given. The exception to this is going to be any backlog scrolls. So the award was already assigned, they didn't have a scroll to give, and they have that being made later. That's going to be your exception. So the date for the event is coming up. You need to get the scroll to the event. How that happens simply needs good communication, whether that be you going to the event yourself or you having somebody else transport that scroll. Your scroll, very important, should be covered somehow. I have had, to give you an example here, you can use a specially made custom case. That's perfectly fine. You can use mailing boxes. That's fine too. Mailing sleeves. You could, if it fits, use one of these. I personally put all of mine in little plastic sleeves. I got them on Amazon. You could probably get them at craft stores because I am paranoid about my scrolls getting ruined. But the scroll needs to be covered somehow. And that is to protect your work. You have done so much work up until now to make sure you give something beautiful. Also, put forth the effort to protect it. Before you hand that over, your name and anybody else who is involved in making that scroll should have their name on the back of the scroll. The person who is receiving that scroll is going to want to thank you, and they need to know who made it. Along with your scroll, you need to have a cut sheet. A cut sheet is, in plain words, what your calligraphy says, word for word. And then at the bottom, Illumination and Calligraphy by Collette. This allows the herald, who's going to be boasting this thing into court, to be able to read what you wrote. Oftentimes, the calligraphy that we make is not going to be immediately legible, and we don't want to have to fumble for the words and try to guess what we see. So making it legible is going to be key. You're going to print that out on a regular piece of paper and stick it with your scroll inside your protective case of some sort. And thank you, Ellen says Hobby Lobby sells those comic book clear sleeves in packs of 25 in a bunch of sizes. So another place that we can find them. Love that. Your point of contact when delivering a scroll is going to be whoever is in charge of the royal room. The head herald or the vox is going to be the person who will be reading those scrolls, and their central location is going to be in the royal room. So whatever event you go to, ask around. I have gone to events and asked 25 people before, where's the royal room? And been pointed in all sorts of directions. But I knew in my head the most important thing when I got there was not to hang out with my friends, was not to do this other thing. It was to deliver that scroll. I could do all the other stuff after, but I needed to deliver that scroll. If for some reason, and this is something that we say in our Signets office, there are no emergencies as long as the scroll or the scribe are not on fire. Life happens. All we ask for is communication. You have had a flu for 3 weeks. Work has taken over your life. You had to move. Someone passed away. Whatever the case, your cat ran across your wet calligraphy the day before the event. That has happened. It's okay. Reach out to the Signet, type them up a quick email. I'm sorry this is going to be late to the event. I should have it done by X time. Or I'm sorry, I can't finish this. I need help. Can you please reassign it? Whatever the case. All we ask in the Signets office is you let us know. We don't need a whole lot of details. Just how we can help you make this a fun experience. At the end of the day, that's what this is meant to be. It's fun. So from start to finish, you have resources, you have contact people, what classes to go to, who to talk to, how to sign up to be a scribe. You have all sorts of online and in-person resources and a whole materials list. You're going to make beautiful work. It's going to be fun. You're going to make mistakes along the way. But the most important thing is to enjoy the ride. Keep a log of how you do from beginning to end. Your very first Scribal day. I have my very first painting still, and it reminds me that I worked hard to get to where I am. And it reminds me to keep going. So be kind to yourself, be kind and encouraging to others. It's hard to sit down and learn a new thing. Does anybody have any other questions? And this is something that actually I have talked to a number of people about. For those of us who like to put pen to paper, both literally and figuratively, blogs are great. I have also been working with a number of students on how to put together ways to show your art that don't require blogs. Um, those of us who are neurodivergent in ways that words get jumbled, typing is difficult. Maybe we have physical limitations that keep us off of keyboards. There are a whole bunch of reasons why maybe a blog doesn't work. So I've encouraged a number of people to go and explore other ways to show their art. Videos is very popular. Um, Putting together photo albums, uh, figuring out different social medias to post them. Ellen says, I have a public Facebook photo album. I love that. Uh, I don't want people to feel like there is only one possible way that that can be displayed. And get creative. It doesn't have to necessarily be a blog. Certainly that lets you explain more, but finding ways that work for you is going to be more important because then you're more likely to talk about it. And this should be so fun. One of my very favorite activities that I do with my students is I have them make note cards. Something that they would love to give for a holiday, a birthday, something like that. I have them fold up their Bristol and I have them start small. Something that's interesting to them. Maybe starting off with um, medieval pictures is not where they want to start. I also taught middle school, so I have used some of that knowledge to kind of find ways to work with people who learn different. Um, find a way to really get them engaged. And maybe the things that are engaging them are those challenging things, and that's okay. It doesn't always have to be you have to start with bar and ivy, then you go into white work. It doesn't have to be that way. Oh, wonderful. A kale, yay. Oh, yes, and happy World Teachers Day. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure. I love chatting about this stuff.